Hi, and welcome to Chi for Yourself. Our main focus on this program is good chi or essential energy and the ways and means of maintaining it. We are glad to have you with us wherever you are in the world today. I think most of us have either been in love or at least we have an opinion on what love is. Love is something that can come over us in a flash. Comedian Lucille Ball was quoted once as saying, "It wasn't love at first sight. It took a full 5 minutes," and it can seem to come on that quickly. So, what is a person to do to navigate the hills and valleys of a love relationship? Our guest on this show is Linda Carroll. She's the author of Love Cycles, the 5 essential stages of lasting love. And Linda, since we seem to be talking about a series of events within a relationship, let's talk about what love cycles are exactly. Can you define that?
I can, but first of all, can I respond to something you just said, which is what is love? And
Mhm.
part of the impetus for writing this book, is my fascination with that question. And can I just add that philosophers and poets and writers, for as long as we've had human life, it seems like on this planet, have been trying to answer that question: what is love?
Okay.
And so, what I've come to in my own search is that love is a feeling, and that a long term relationship is a skill set. It's a skill set of actions that happen whether we're feeling it or we're not. Because most one of the biggest troubles people come to in counseling, which is what I do when I'm not writing um, books, is they say I'm not in love with my partner,
Hmm.
and I say, okay, what do you think this means? And most often they think it means that the relationship is over. And yet, what I know from being in a long term marriage is that some days the love is so thick and strong you can see it and stir it, and other days it's nowhere to be found. And it's just, so really, I've come to this idea that, and I would say I have a very rich marriage, but it doesn't mean that we always feel the same thing, and that some days are sort of dull, and some days they're hard, and some days are wonderful. So the the feeling of love we often mistake for the quality of the relationship. And everything is in cycles. I live in Oregon where we're now moving into the fall, and boy, it's so clear that summer is over. I see everywhere there's signs of it. I want to
Hmm.
hold on to that summer. I love the summer, and yet the fall is coming. And in long-term relationships, we have many seasons, including some stormy days, some lightning and thunder, and some long winters. And I think it's inevitable. But we think that because we've moved from summer to fall, something's wrong. It's just a cycle. So love cycles is based on this idea that cycles are normal and everything. Love is a feeling. A long-term relationship that is um, successful, because many long-term relationships have the years, but not the goodness and enrichingness
No.
in them. Long-term relationship that is successful is based on lots of acts of and lots of skills that have gone on through that time, through days of love and days of not so loving.
Hmm. Well,
So
so
how is that? You go ahead.
no, that's an excellent start to getting into some of these different facets of the relationship. And so often the relationship loses its luster and things like monotony and antagonism can set in. Are couples wasting their energy if they promise each other they'll be different and stay immersed in that first blissful cycle of merge?
Um, no, I don't think so. But I think that it's not just it's promising each other that you're going to stay in it is like promising your partner that you're going to stay in an exercise program. But the bottom line is not what you promise; it's what you do. And if you, it's a, and I think that a long-term love relationship it's like a yoga practice or any other kind of practice, a running practice. Is that you have got to do the things that keep love alive. You don't just say we're going to do it, but my husband has brought me a latte every morning for 30 years. And some mornings he brings me the latte and he hands it to me with a smile. And some mornings he's preoccupied and he just hands it to me. He brings it to me in bed. He gets up much earlier than I do. And some mornings he brings it to me with a frown. Some mornings he's even put it on the other side of the bed, on his side, when he's really mad at me to punish me and make me have to reach for it. But he brings me that latte every day. And that to me is such a rich love song because it's those acts that move us through. I can't stay too upset with that latte in my hand. It's an ongoing memory or thought of all the good that he puts into the relationship, as well as the petty things I'm usually upset about.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just promising we're going to stay in this place, but I'm willing to do those actions, those acts of goodwill that keep it going. Lattes and appreciations and all those things that we do to nourish a relationship.
Yeah, yeah. Now I know from the book you had some bumpy points in your marriage, but you were able to overcome those. Were you ever at a point where you thought, "Hey, I don't know if this is working out"?
Sure, I have. I've been, of course, and I mean, I say, of course. I think that people. I think that most people, if they're honest, have those kinds of moments. But when in reflection, those moments were more about me and my own frustration at certain times in my life than they were about him. But when we are having trouble in the world or in our work or in other parts of our life, guess who this first person sitting in front of us is that we look at is our partner. And so often the trouble that's going on inside of me gets projected onto my partner, but it's not about him. But I've had those moments, but I also have a memory and in my mind that comes up every day when he hands me that latte that reminds me that the better part of our relationship is bigger. I have two friends that have run every day for 45 years. And they've run through sickness. They've run through the biggest messes you've ever seen in a marriage. And they've run not speaking to each other, but every day they got up and they went for that run. And now they run on different legs than they had 45 years ago. But they will say, they have one of the richest marriages I know, people say, how did you get through some of those really hard times? And one of the things they say is, we had to practice. And we ran on that beach every morning without even speaking to each other, but we did it. There was some way we both showed up, and we let the storm pass, and something new could come in. Is that making sense? I'm not avoiding your question.
No, it does. It does.
Oh, good.
It does.
Okay.
It does. I can see where there's a point at which sameness is sort of an anchor, and it actually is a reminder that you care, even though it is the same thing day after day. It's more of a symbol than anything else.
That's right. And if you think about a human life, one person, and what we go through in our own life, most of us, that we have certain times where we doubt our career, or we doubt our friendships, or we doubt what we're doing with our time. We have days we wake up, we feel great. There are other days that are harder to get through, and some days are really the doldrums. Well, if you put two people together, isn't that going to happen in a relationship? And it doesn't mean something's wrong. It just means you're two humans together. Now, there are times, of course, that people need to leave a relationship, and I'm not saying that everything is going to be fine if you bring each other a latte or go for a run on the beach. But I'm saying for a lot of people that get lost in the normal struggles of life, the normal struggles of a relationship, that if they can find a way out of the struggle, they find that the relationship is there and it's intact.
Well, we're going to ask you to put your therapist hat on now. And as a therapist, you've probably heard every laundry list of things that bug people about their partners: eating crackers in bed, squeezing the toothpaste tube in the middle. Is there a point, or what do you say if your couples feel that there's a point at which it's just not worth it anymore? Can you encourage them to change, or when do you know that it's over?
It's so interesting. I'm doing so many interviews now for my Love Cycles book, and that's a question people ask over and over again. And I keep thinking I'm going to come up with a really clever answer, but you know what? I don't have one. I have an answer, but it's not a black and white answer. I mean, there are big issues that are not overcomable. crackers in bed may be big for a few people, but that there are issues that are really excruciating for people, profound differences. And we know that that isn't always true either, but politically or spiritually, or one person who is in an ongoing affair with another, or somebody who is so self-centered they don't have a space for a partner, or things that just don't work year after year after year. But, I have seen people with the biggest messes you could imagine work it out. And I've seen people who have so much in common and so much that's similar between them and even like each other, but they don't seem to have the juice to stay in the marriage.
Mm-hmm.
So I've come to the conclusion that while there are certain things that we need to leave, like if we are in danger or if the other person is doing behavior that's very painful and dangerous for us, that it's really something that each individual person knows in their body. I've sat with people who have said, "Should I leave or should I stay?" And they've made endless lists about what's good and what isn't working. And the list maybe get you to a place where but the list really don't tell you. The answer's in your body. There are people who stick with it to impossible situations because something in them says, "I need to work it out with this person. I need to put a little more into it." And then there are people for whom that just isn't there. It's done. The energy is gone and it isn't coming back. So I don't have a great big answer to that. I have an answer that you stay with the process and try and get out of the pain. And if you can get out of the pain of where you're caught with each other, what that troubling dynamic is, or dynamics are, then you can see the relationship more clearly. But I don't know that there's no 1, 2, 3 about it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like love itself. How love comes and how love goes. It's very complicated, and I think each person has to find out in their life what that means for them.
Mm-hmm. Some couples you look at and you think, "Gee, didn't you know this about the person before you hooked up with them?" I mean, it seems so obvious. When we discuss likes and dislikes with are there any red flags that could pop up and say, "Hey, run the other way"?
Yes, there are. There are big red flags. Sadly, one of the things that happens when we are falling madly in love is that we have all these chemical changes in our brain. And so one of the things they do is they stop us from seeing red flags. But, red flags, it's a great topic. And I think that people say, "How do I know? I'm madly in love with this person. How do I know if this is someone I should be with?" And I answer that by saying, look at objective information, not what you feel. Because love is a feeling, and we can fall in love with the most inappropriate person ever. But who is, if long-term relationships are skill sets, what are the skills? The skill to be able to own your part of trouble, to be able to change your behavior, to say, "I'm sorry," to not be a victim. And so how does this person do with those skills? How is this person with their, not just communication, but willingness to learn new communication skills? Because we know from the research that one of the most important aspects of a long-term relationship is managing conflict. There will be conflict. Couples have about 10 irresolvable issues. They don't get better. They'll never change. That's not, people don't like that, but I think it's true. And it's the same issues for people like, sex and money and kids and vacations, all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so the real question is not, do these issues exist, but how is this person who I may be so madly in love with that I think that one part of me believes love can fix everything. What's the other side of that? Can my rational brain just sit down for a while and say, how does he work out with his family? What are his relationships like with his siblings? How is he done in jobs? How does he talk about his past love for? That's a big one, because does he talk about a past relationship as an ending because it was always somebody else's fault, or does he talk about it owning some part of the trouble? How generous is he? Generosity is the most important quality that studies have found that sustains relationships. They thought it would be lots of sex or good communication, but it was generosity hands down. This is a long-term study the University of Virginia did. how generous is this person? In love, we're all generous when we're under the spell of love. Nobody can do enough for each other, right?
Hmm.
But when that wears off, how are they going to wear over time? And the red flags are something, knowing that we're going to miss those red flags, because one of the things all of the chemicals do when we fall into the merge, into the romance, is they block out the part of our brain that is the rational part. The 911 center of the brain takes a long vacation, and what we do is we are so lost in the feeling that we have for this person that we miss some of those signs that say, this is not a good long-term partner.
Hmm. Well, you mentioned the skill set, and one of the skills necessary in a committed relationship, and tops on your list in the book, is understanding your part in the trouble. And I'm wondering, in what is arguably a selfish society, are we getting any better at realizing, hey, we have a part in this?
I used to see people when I started 35 years ago. I started seeing couples, and people would come in who were in terrible trouble, and that was 90% of the people. But I see a lot of people that come in now. Maybe they're older, maybe they're in a new relationship and they want to do it differently, or sometimes they're even younger people who say, I want to know ahead of time how we're going to get into trouble. This is what premarital counseling used to be, but it wasn't, because we didn't have this information about relationships. But in answer to your question, I think that people are more aware that the human condition is one where we all have troubles that we get into, and that we get into trouble, and it doesn't mean something's bad or wrong about you. I talk about something called loops, for example, and infinity loops in the book. And
Hmm.
that what we know from the research is that for men, generally, not all men, of course, but for most men, a number one fear is feeling criticized. And for most women, a number one fear is feeling disconnected. And when we feel distressed in those ways, criticized or disconnected, we have a response. We either go into fight or freeze or flee. So let's say that this is true, certainly in my marriage. I'm much more of a connector. My husband is much more. He values solitude.
Hmm.
And let's say we have a wonderful night out, which we do often. We come home. I want to talk about the night out. I want to process. I want to process how it was. He wants to read a book. So we're sitting on the couch. We've had a great night out, and I say to him, well, wasn't that a great night? And he says, yes. And I say, what's wrong? Nothing's wrong. He says, I'm reading a book. Yeah, but we just had this wonderful night, I say. Don't you want to talk about it? No, we don't need to talk about it. It was great, but now I want to read my book. Now then, what do? Do I start to get critical, which I may do, and say,
Hmm.
how can I really trust these wonderful nights when we come home and you're not available? And then he may withdraw. And if he withdraws, I may get more critical. And so what we're doing is we're responding to our stress. So what I need to do with that is I need to see my part is that I'm just wanting more connection. He's not able to give it. Neither of us are wrong. And so what he might do is he might say when I come up and say, hey, what are you doing? He will look up perhaps and say, well, I'm reading, and I know you probably want connection. How about if we talk in a little while? Just give me a little space.
Hmm.
That settles me down. Or I might feel like I want to go towards him, but instead of doing that, I know that it's just that I have a different need than he does. Neither of us, again, are wrong. And instead I might say, hey, how about when you're done reading if we have a little more time? But that's very different than the first instinct, which is to move forward or to push away.
Hmm.
So in answer to your question, I think as we're learning more culturally from all kinds of great books and programs and teachers, that people are not doing something wrong; they're just being different. That it's easier to look at one's behavior instead of thinking it is wrong. To just think of it as I'm a different kind of person than he is, and how do two different people work out together?
Yeah. Yeah. For a country that fixates so much on sex, we seem to have a not so good record on sexual relationships. And since it can be the source of so much heartache, how much value or attention should we put on it in the relationship?
How much attention to sex? What a great question, huh? I think again, I'm going to skirt a little bit and say that's a very important part of a relationship, and we know all the wonderful things that sex does for us. That there's lots of good reasons to keep your sex life rich and alive. I mean, it relieves stress, it lowers blood pressure, it boosts our immunity, and we even know that it reduces depression. But I think there's a more important question, which is, or a more important thing to keep alive, which is the conversation about sex. People stop talking about sex, and that is, and again, in a long-term relationship, you go through a lot of seasons with sex. You may have kids in the bed, or or cycles at work that affect your libido, or you just, as aging affects sex greatly, affects our libido, at least most of us. Um, how do we keep talking about it? How does the conversation stay alive? Because often when people have different desires, which is the number one trouble people complain about, is desire discrepancy. When people have desire discrepancy, often they stop talking about it. One person wants to have sex all the time.
Mm-hmm.
One person is totally not interested, and they make a story up about what it means. The person whose partner isn't interested says to themselves, "Oh, if she loved me, she'd want to have sex. Therefore, she must not love me," and closes off. Or the person who's with somebody who's always wanting sex and who has a low libido says, that person's sex drive is an overdrive. This is, they're not interested in connecting. They just want sex. So we make a story up about what's not true. And then we react as though the story is true. The conversation is what we need to have happen, which is that in fact, there's an interesting study about couples who stop having sex. There are many studies, and because we know that 1 out of 5 couples have stopped totally. Don't have it, don't talk about it, never will again. And not to mention people who have less and less and less. But one of the interesting studies about that is that it's very often men who stop having sex. And it's not what we think of in a relationship. We think about men as having so much more testosterone, but actually it's often the man that stops. And the reason is that we know that for men over a certain age, that their bodies don't work like they once did.
Mm-hmm.
They have all kinds of sexual issues that happen that are normal. They're not abnormal. They have premature ejaculation, or if they're not able to get an erection, or there's a whole variety of normal aging behaviors. But because men don't talk about this very much with each other, and often, and I'm not saying all men for sure, but I'm saying many men, and often are identified with themselves at a younger age sexually, just like physically, that when it doesn't look right, they will feel embarrassed, ashamed, and not know how to laugh at it, not know how to talk with their partner about, what, I'm reading about this, and this is common for men my age. What should we do? Instead of that, they close up. And so that's it. The topic's closed. It's not, and of course, nothing's always true. But I found that really an interesting study that men are the ones that stop it often.
Yeah, yeah. The thing that really resonated in the book for me, and I really, really like this line, you say that intimacy depends on the ability to be separate, which sounds really counterintuitive, but can you explain that line, just exactly what it means?
Sure. What I bring to you is what is within me. And if I don't have much in me except to do with you, I don't have much to bring to the relationship. And, I know that my husband and I often do things separately, and he'll go off and have an adventure somewhere. He just went to Nepal this year with my sons and his, and came back after 4 weeks, and we didn't stop talking for a month about it. He was so new and engaged and interesting. Or I go off and I work a lot at Rancho La Puerta in Mexico, often for 2 weeks at a time, and talk about love cycles. And when I come back, we always have the first night I get back, we plan a dinner out, and we're so interested in each other. We're so full of our own juice that we can bring something new into the relationship. And I think that that is true. If I don't have a relationship with myself, how can I have a relationship with somebody else?
Mm-hmm. Well, we're moving right through the half hour here, the topic that is miles wide and miles deep. I have one more question for you. If a couple sat down with you before starting their lives together, what kind of suggestions or big suggestion would you give them?
Oh, what a great question. If before starting, well, obviously they'd started their life because
A
they were
committed relationship, a longer committed relationship, say a marriage
right,
counts. Yeah.
right. I think what I would probably do is I would probably invite them to become familiar with something like the Enneagram, which is a personality study, which is, and there are many different ones out there. I love the Enneagram the most, but something which helps them see how they're different going into it, how that they're different, and to anticipate that even though they're in this magical stage of love right now, that's going to wear thin, and that when that happens, those differences are going to get bigger. So I would help them understand that being different isn't wrong, and that right now those differences seem to appeal, but eventually, what we fall in love with, often the other side of that annoys us. And so giving them some things, some information about that happening before it happens, if they've come in to try to find out about it, I think it's a great thing, a great sign that they're really interested in doing something proactively.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that's what I do.
Now, give us your website where we find you on the web.
Okay, it's lovecycles.org, and there's a quiz on that
Mm-hmm.
website that lets people take the quiz and find out what cycle they're in, and then it just gives you some really good information about what to do in each cycle and ideas for how to make it easier. Lovecycles.org is how they get to me, and how they can get the book anywhere. It's all over, but if they want to do the quiz, that's really fun. Lots of people have enjoyed that.
The book is Love Cycles, The 5 Essential Stages of Lasting Love from Linda Carroll. Linda, thanks for being with us today and for bringing light to the subject of love and helping us kind of navigate the love landscape. I hope you come back and talk with us again, okay?
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. It's been fun to talk to you.
Great. Well, have a great day, and we'll talk to you later.
You
Thanks.
too.
Bye-bye. All right, and we will link to Linda Carroll's website, and you'll see that at achieve4yourself.com. I want to say thanks to those who have subscribed at the website and are getting the blog posts. And by doing that, getting news of future guests and talk show topics and things like that, talking points and what have you. That's what you'll get if you subscribe. So if you're not already at the website, if you're watching, let's say, from the YouTube page, go to the website, leave your email address, and we will make sure that you get caught up on what's going on with the shows. And I mentioned the YouTube page. That's a good way to catch the show too, because while it is shown on the website live by way of Google Hangouts, it also comes to you at achieve4yourself.com/geohost. Okay, so you go to that YouTube page and you'll see the show there too. Otherwise, pick up the podcast wherever great podcasts are carried. One of those is blogtalkradio.com. That should be posted tomorrow. You'll see the show there in its finished form. So that's going to just about do it for today. I want to say thanks so much for being with us. Be well, and I will talk to you soon.